Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock news and politics hour now. As we usually do most Tuesdays, check in with American University Professor of Politics, Jennifer Lawless. Jennifer, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
We are doing well up here, but all eyes in D.C. Don't even know where to start, but I think we have to start with Cohen and Hannity. This is the revelation that Cohen and Sean Hannity was the mystery client, so to speak, and now the fallout has just been monumental. What's the reaction been down in D.C.?
I think monumental, but also really surprising. I was actually in my office yesterday with a reporter doing something else, and the alert came through our phones, and we both looked at it, and she gasped audibly, just because nobody was expecting this, and certainly nobody was expecting that the judge was going to require that the name be disclosed during the hearing. So, I think we were all a little bit surprised, and this is also a situation where the extent to which Fox News is so linked to Donald Trump is pretty surprising.
And so let's talk about what's happening now. Sean Hannity has clearly tried to downplay, basically said, yes, maybe I had conversations, has nothing to do. To the average person, what does that mean?
Well, it means a couple of things. The first is that he said that it's just a few conversations, mostly about real estate, that he hadn't hired him as a lawyer per se. Yet, by the same token, he's saying that he believes that his conversations were protected by attorney-client privilege. And you can't have it both ways. Either he was his attorney, and that's why it's protected by attorney-client privilege, or he's not. So I think until Sean Hannity decides what he wants his relationship with Michael Cohen to be, we can't really forecast with any kind of accuracy how much of a bombshell this actually is.
And how, if or when, will his hand be forced to, so to speak, clarify this? Will we get a resolution as to which one it is?
Well, so my bet is that we're going to find out within the next couple of days for 2 reasons. The first is that Fox News is going to have to make a statement, because the fact that Sean Hannity has been covering Donald Trump and Michael Cohen and didn't disclose his relationship is problematic, and the network is going to have to say something about that. Moreover, it's clearly the case that Sean Hannity has to decide if the materials that might be disclosed are so embarrassing that he wants to actually admit that Michael Cohen is his lawyer so that they could potentially be privileged. If there's nothing there, or he's not that worried about the content, then my bet is that he'll say that they actually were not privileged because it allows him to maintain some degree of journalistic integrity.
What's your thought? Real estate or more?
More, of course, more. I mean, this is a situation where nobody has been telling the truth about anything regarding this investigation. And I think the one thing that all of these players have in common is they don't tell the truth until they're forced to. And if they all would have just said what their relationships were from the beginning, we probably wouldn't be in these positions.
Let's talk about Stormy Daniels, the sketch. The sketch is out there. Are there any suspects yet?
Not that I know of. Now, I should note, I've been traveling most of the day, so I haven't actually seen the sketch. I heard about the big reveal. But, I think this is another example of how convoluted and twisted and related all of these different aspects of investigation really are. It's strange enough that Stormy Daniels was at the courthouse yesterday. What's a little bit stranger is that she's making the media rounds today. And in a lot of ways is being upstaged by Sean Hannity, who wishes that his name wasn't being mentioned. So it's all a little bit an upside down world, I think.
And the upside down world, of course, it's distraction politics to the hilt in D.C. under the Trump administration. But, poor Comey, he's just not really getting any oxygen right now.
Well, he'll be on The View tomorrow, I think. Maybe that'll change things for him. I'll be interested to see how those ladies treat him. I mean, my heart does not bleed for James Comey. The one thing that I can say is that I found him to be more sanctimonious in his interview with George Stephanopoulos than I even thought was possible. This man is behaving as though the entire world was literally a weight upon his shoulders. And the only reason it was because he decided to make it that way. So, I don't find him a particularly sympathetic character. The Democrats don't like him, and neither do the Republicans. And frankly, both sides have good reason. That said, I think probably he's telling the truth, and every word he says I would lend credence to. But, I still think that there was a different way to go about doing it, and this was not the best way.
You talk about, again, the Dems not liking him, the Republicans not liking him, but apparently a bestseller.
Right. Well, we as the American people, I think, are somewhat hypocritical. We have major problems with the behavior of a lot of politicians and other men behaving badly, but we can't keep ourselves from reading their every word. So I have not purchased the book. Now, next week at this time, I very well may have, but at this point, I'm trying to hold strong. My bet is that the hour-long interview with George Stephanopoulos gives us the gist of what we needed to know.
So just, are you not getting the book on principle alone?
I am. I'm not getting the book on principle alone, and I don't have a lot of principles. So this demonstrates that there's really something off-putting about this book.
Well, as we talked, I mean, people who leave, obviously, positions go on to do other things. You know, books are often, you know, on the table, so to speak, to maybe get a little cash. But do we expect this from a former FBI individual?
No. And we certainly don't expect it at this time. I mean, there's currently an open investigation. And so if James Comey really believes that he had no choice but to behave the way that he behaved because the entire government was resting upon him and because he couldn't trust anybody else to protect the integrity of the FBI and the Justice Department and the institution more broadly, then it's somewhat puzzling to understand why he would release the book now and not once the entire investigation is over. Not to mention the fact that it would probably be a more interesting book at that point, too, because he's currently involved.
Do we have a sense, have we seen dollar signs associated with this book deal? Is he not just cashing in?
Oh, he's cashing in. I haven't seen dollar signs yet, but I know that the publisher ordered 850,000 advance copies. So I think he's good to go for the foreseeable future.
So you talk, you know, he did Stephanopoulos, but of course, you know, between Cohen and Hannity, between Stormy Daniels, you know, he's out there, you know, on the dog and pony circuit, and he's certainly being possibly a little bit outshadowed by a few other things going on. But let's talk about going back to let's go to foreign relations. Let's talk about Syria. Let's talk about Russia. Let's talk about Nikki Haley, and let's talk about where Trump has now come down. The UN ambassador was proposing sanctions against Russia, and now the president wants to put the brakes on.
And it wasn't only that the UN ambassador was proposing sanctions. I mean, she was on the Sunday morning shows this weekend saying literally that as she was speaking, it was possible that Steve Mnuchin was executing the order to move forward with those sanctions. So this was a situation where it was not a proposal. In her view, it was a done deal, and it would very likely take place during the time that she was talking to Chuck Todd. So the fact that 48 hours later we have no sanctions, and 24 hours later Donald Trump made it clear that he had no interest in imposing them totally undermines her. And it undermines her not only as a member of the administration, but on the global stage as a member of the Trump administration who was viewed as pretty reputable and respectable on the international stage. So it's hard to imagine how she can maintain any degree of credibility or integrity and keep that position.
Well, what's the talk, so to speak? I mean, there's been talk, let's face it, about Nikki Haley having very pronounced political ambitions, talked about this, you know, meteorological rise and ascension through the party. Again, I don't know if we'll ever find out. I mean, could there be a chance that this is a power play, so to speak? She maybe thought she had the green light, and then the rug got pulled out underneath her.
It might be, except I'm not really sure what her incentive would be to behave that way. The best thing that she could do would be to make it through the administration for the first term anyway, or to the impeachment, whichever comes first, and then say that she can't do this anymore or that she served her time, or to say, you know what, I can't work with this administration and step down and then pursue her political ambitions that way. I just don't see, this looks like she was undercut and that she assumed authority that she didn't have, and that doesn't bode well for a higher office at some point in the future.
So do you think this is very damaging for Nikki Haley moving forward?
No. So I actually think that if she says, oh my gosh, I can't trust this administration, I can't believe the way this president behaved, I'm stepping down, I think that could actually be quite helpful to her. If she continues to try and play the way that Donald Trump is playing, she's going to lose every time because nobody can anticipate his next move.
So is she operating on a very short time frame here, so to speak? I mean, does she really have the luxury of sort of days to think this over? Does she need to strike when the iron's hot to say, whoa, this is what really happened?
I'm not sure that she needs to come public and say this is what really happened if she decides to step down. If she plans to stay, then she's got to get her story straight with the president and explain why there was this miscommunication. But frankly, if there was a miscommunication, or if they're going to spin it that way, then that's highly problematic. And you'd have to wonder if Donald Trump can trust her in that position. So, I tend to believe that what she said, she thought she was authorized to say, and that at some point it was agreed upon, just because of the certainty and the timeline that she put forward. She also does not have a habit of saying things that are completely undermined by the administration. So this leads me to believe that Donald Trump didn't like what he saw that morning, not by Nikki Haley, but on Fox News or from Sean Hannity or whatever else, and changed course accordingly.
So one name that hasn't come up in this conversation today on today's show, Mueller. What are we keeping an eye on D.C. moving forward now?
Well, I think the seized documents from Cohen's office are the key here, because what Kimba Woods said was that both the prosecution and Michael Cohen's lawyers now get to look through the documents as soon as they are told what is privileged information and what's not. So I think we'll have a much better sense by the end of the week as to, because now we're talking about a 2 or 3 day delay, as to what it is that is in these documents, and we'll be able to read a little bit more in terms of tea leaves of what Bob Mueller is probably going to go for.
And now, are we seeing, what's the talk about politics with Kimba Wood, who we know was tops on Bill Clinton's list for AG? We know that Governor Gina Raimondo was a clerk for Kimba Wood. What's the talk on the politics involved?
I mean, the politics involved is more about the Southern District of New York and less about Kimba Wood per se. There's no question that she's a hard ass, right? If you'll pardon the expression. Nobody wants to be in front of her if they are, sort of worried that they did something wrong. And that court and that district is very well known for prosecuting quite heavily and not having a lot of sympathy for financial crimes. So, I think that this is the worst case scenario for Michael Cohen, assuming that he did anything wrong, and probably the best case scenario for eventually Bob Mueller's investigation.
So
I will say, though, that
she's tough, but she's also known as the love judge.
Well, so that's what I was going to say. I mean, the one thing that I'll be looking for over the course of the next few days is the manner in which she becomes a public interest story. Now, she's been in and out of the news over time because of various appointments and the fact that they gain national attention, but she's really in the spotlight now. And so the extent to which her history and her appearance and her background become fodder for commentary will be something that I'll be looking at for the next few days.
It will be interesting to see because, I mean, she's been dragged through public scrutiny before. This isn't like the first time we're looking at her bio.
That's right. It's just the first time that people might care because it's the first time that she's weighing in on something that the American public seems to think is particularly interesting and important.
Well, so much to keep an eye on down in D.C. Appreciate it as always, Jennifer. I know you've got stuff to get off to, so thank you for Skyping into the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. We'll talk next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock news and politics show. I'd like to welcome my next guest in. She's a Rhode Islander making a name for herself. Erica Atwell, thank you for coming into the studio today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate.
Well, I appreciate your coming in because you took off to California to make a name for yourself. and you're continuing to do so, but we've got you back here for a little bit. You've got a show taking place here in Rhode Island coming up that I want folks to know about, and then we're going to tack back to the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm so excited to let everybody know that I will be performing in Cranston, Rhode Island. It's called the Artists Exchange, and it's a great nonprofit that actually helps funds programs for adults, individuals with Down syndrome. During the daytime, we have some great programs going on, and at nighttime, there's theater. And so the show that I'm in is called Everybody Needs Some Therapy Sometimes.
Everybody needs some therapy sometimes. Talk with us a little bit about the show, who's behind it, and what folks can expect.
Yes, okay, so Nick Albanese, hey Nick.
Hey Nick, he's been here before.
That's right, he's been here. He's fantastic. Let me tell you something, this guy is like a one-man show. He just came back from Broadway with his show, The Last Sicilian. And he knew that I was in town, and I reached out to him about this opportunity, Everybody Needs Therapy, because it was originally for a male. And I asked him, I said, hey Nick, is there any problem with a female reading for this role? And he said, sure, why not? So we met for coffee, I read for the role, and yeah, I got it. So it's the opening scene for this new session called Everybody Needs Therapy.
Everybody Needs Therapy. And so talk with us, what's the run? We'll have links up so folks can, if they want to check you out, but tell us a little bit more about how many performances.
Okay, great, yeah. So opening night, press night is going to be May 3rd, and I'll be coming back from a film festival. We'll talk about that in just a second. So then opening night is going to be May 4th and May 5th and May 11th and May 12th. So we've got 4 shows for you to come check out.
And what's the show like? You said it was written for a male, but you know, if folks are interested to learn even a little bit more, I mean, talk to us a little bit about the content.
Okay, so the content is just, it's very relatable for anybody who's going through stuff in your life and you need to talk about it. This is kind of for you to come out and just kick up your heels and have a laugh with us. My set is the opening act, and I play this radio personality, and I, am going to the lines to get a caller, and I have a first-time caller, and he has an issue, and so I'm dealing with that, and that's kind of the gist of it.
So do you work back and forth with the caller, or is it just you?
Oh yeah, it's me, and Nick is actually playing the opposite of me, so I'm very excited to hit the stage with him. We actually auditioned for the Road Show 7 years ago together. We were in line together like this. So you can imagine how excited I am to share a stage with him and just be there doing what we love.
That's such a Rhode Island story to talk about how you meet someone and then where your careers go and then intersect back 7 years later. You went out, struck out to the West Coast and said, I'm going out there, I'm going to make a name for myself. Tell folks who have known you from here, I mean, we've seen you working with Robin Williams, being on the Jay Leno garage. and all the opportunities. What's it like to go out to the West Coast and said, I'm going to try to make it?
I got to tell you something. I ask myself that every day because I'm still making it. But I think that it's something bigger. It's something that even the dream is so big that when you're realizing it, you just kind of wake up every day and one foot for the next and you figure it out. Coming from a place of Rhode Island, such a small state, there was a lot of learning curves and, but it's been a great journey and I'm very grateful for it. And now I'm doing what I love, which I didn't know was acting at first, but it kind of unfolded. And I'm glad I kept asking myself what made me happy.
And one of the pivotal influences you had out in Hollywood was working with Robin Williams.
Yes.
Talk with us a little bit about that.
As an actor, you want to take things from actors that you admire. And with Robin, working with him in the same close proximity, you just, when they call action, you're on. But seeing him be just normal in conversation and then hit action and just went for it, what you learn about acting is that it's just being natural. It's just being in the moment, and it's not caring what other people think and just doing it and having fun.
And just going with it and having fun, which I see you do so often. And talk with us about this film fest.
Yes, I'm very excited. So in September, I was the associate line producer on a film called Miss Arizona, and it just got accepted into the Bentonville Film Festival, which is Gina Davis's film festival. So it's super exciting because Our film was comprised of close to 80% women, so female in film. Yay!
Woohoo!
I was the associate line producer, and I also joined SAG. Last time we talked, I was like saving money for SAG. Finally joined SAG, and
do you have your card on you? Is it on you?
It's in my wallet. Yes, it is. I actually know my number right off the top of my head, and so yeah, it's fantastic. It's the first SAG film I've been in, and I've just been auditioning for some other stuff as of right now with my agents.
So talk with us, associate line producer. You know, us lay people, we go to the movies, we see that along, you know, sort of the
credits.
The credits at the end. Talk with, what does it mean to be an associate line producer?
What do those names mean?
Yeah.
I now know what all of those roles mean, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because that's the magic of being on set, is knowing that everybody's there. But, sorry, what was your question?
What do you do as an associate line producer when we see your name as that credit? What's the day-to-day action that you take on the film?
You get people paid, and that's the truth. There's a lot of paperwork that comes with SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and so you've got to make sure that you get all that paperwork in line and you get those checks cut. Everybody wants to be paid on Friday, okay? I'm just saying.
It's all about the money. Associate line producer at this film fest. How long will you be there for?
Yeah, so I fly in on the 30th, and our premiere is on May 2nd, and then I have a quick turnaround. I got to be back here
for May 3rd for your performance. Oh my goodness. So will we see pics from you on the red carpet on May 2nd?
Yes, you will. And actually, I wish, is anyone out there, do I have a Rhode Island local stylist who wants to style me for this carpet? Just saying, because stuff is in LA right now.
She's got a lot of stuff going on, and then going back to LA. What's it like being on the West Coast? You're a Rhode Island girl through and through. Are you an East Coast girl or a West Coast girl?
I have such East Coast swag. Are you kidding me? I love my Rhode Island roots. It's my dream, and it's my commitment to make films here in New England, and specifically Rhode Island. You know, you've got all of the landscapes you possibly need, all of the weather options, as we know.
Yes, we have.
And yeah, it just feels so good. I love Rhode Island, and I love everyone that's watching this right now, and I hope that you watch me for many years to come on your screen.
Well, we certainly will. We love to root for the hometown hero and Erica Atwell going out to the West Coast, being back here. We'll have all those links to all these opportunities to see a rising star, but I appreciate your taking the time to come into the studio.
Kate,
Erica
so
Atwell, I'll let you go around the corner. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock News and Politics Hour. We had Jennifer Lawless at American University, rising star Erica Atwell, and a guest we've had here before, author, politician, leader, Paul Caranci. Thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me back.
I appreciate having you back because I wanted to talk with you a little bit about North Providence.
My favorite subject.
GoLocal did a story just recently. Mayor Charles Lombardi had sent a political email during working hours. Now, of course, there's laws pertaining to this. You can read this on GoLocal as well. But more importantly, ethics. Now, during the campaign, he promised to put together an ethics commission comprised of mayoral appointees and city council appointees, right, which has not transpired. The mayor said he's focused on improving the bond rating in the city. And we've gotten a wide range of reactions from folks after this story pertaining to, well, these ordinances are in place for a reason, to prohibit politicking on governmental taxpayer time.
Right.
We've also heard from folks who said, not a big deal. Is an ethics commission needed in North Providence?
Well, from where I stand, the North Providence is probably one of the most ethically challenged communities in the state. You know, I've been involved in exposing corruption there, and I know the depth of it. And it was during that whole episode, when I was working undercover with the FBI, that I first got the idea to introduce an ethics ordinance in the town. And I researched it, found out that Indianapolis, Indiana had a very strong ethics ordinance, and I drafted one modeled after that. At the same time, another councilman, Frank Manfredi, who was also involved in exposing some of the corruption in town, unbeknownst to me, was working on the same thing. And he modeled his after the city of Providence, which he was very familiar with their ordinance. He knew it worked well. And he tapped me on the shoulder one day and said, hey, Paul, I'm going to be introducing this ethics ordinance. Would you sign on to it? And I said, gee, Frank, I've been working on the same thing. So bottom line was, we both agreed to introduce our respective ordinances into the council. We did that. I think it was either late 2009 or early 2010. And the council sent it to the ordinance committee, which is routine. Ordinance committee sat on it for several months, which violates our town charter, and eventually came out with one consolidated draft, which they sent back to the council. Council advertised it and had a public hearing and passed it. Mayor signed it. It was a unanimous vote, and there was no objection to it.
So talk with folks, you know, when you hear these stories, you know, people, I think it was John Marion raised a couple other instances. You do hear it, the use of public equipment, and it's not just equipment. It's the thought of politicking on city time, town time, state time. You know, how big of a deal is this?
Well, it's wrong at so many levels. You know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, when you have bribery, extortion, and all the other crimes that can be committed in government, you'd say, well, that's kind of minor. And it is to an extent. If it were one isolated incident, if it were a mistake, if it were an emergency even, where, you know, your personal equipment broke down and you said, well, let me just try sending it on this, and maybe once you get away with it, even with intentions of reimbursing the town for the paper or whatever, the ink, that might be a different story. But when it's just one more violation and a long history of violations, and when it's repeated, and the same mistakes are repeated over and over again, and when the town's resources, be it equipment like fax machines or computers, town resources like personnel or anything else, are used for personal gain or personal convenience, and the taxpayers are paying for it, it's wrong at every level.
And what do you have to say? The mayor did call us negative for focusing on this. Is this not the role of the Fourth Estate to keep a check and balance on government and politics?
It certainly should be. It should be, and you know, obviously GoLocal does its job very well, and the mayor apparently agreed with that statement that you're always writing negative things. Well, you know, we got enough cheerleaders in government. We don't need more cheerleaders from the press. We need watchdogs. And you know, it's up. Thank God there's somebody watching that can question it, because people like me sit back at home and we watch these things, but you know, our voices can't go anywhere unless we have the press. And you know, thank God that there's somebody willing to take an interest.
Do you think there's any potential to see a commission moving forward if we have yet to see one?
You know, if there's enough pressure brought to bear by the people of the town who are being deprived of the honest services because there is no recourse when something like this happens, if there's enough pressure by the press who pursues this and, you know, questions it every time there's a violation, then I think, yes, something could happen. But absent that, no, the commission will never be appointed. I mean, this is now 8 years and counting that the law has passed, and for 8 years, every council member and the mayor have violated that ordinance. So it's another law that they're breaking. Why? If you don't want the ordinance, if you think it's superfluous or it's useless, or if you think that North Providence is such a you know, an ethically, it's not ethically challenged, it's an ethical town and there's no problems there, then have the courage to abolish it and say we don't need this. But don't leave it in place and continue to violate it. You know, when you pick and choose which laws you're going to follow, that's when chaos ensues. And who's to say, you object to this law, so we ignore it. I object to another law, we ignore that. Before you know it, every law that somebody doesn't like is being ignored. Nothing good comes of that.
And so, you have the experience having gone through what you did yourself, being that watchdog as well. I mean, do you just feel that, does history often repeat itself? Yes. Yes, and unfortunately, not a lot has changed, even as a result of the arrests and the things that, I was involved with. It's a different cast of characters doing different things, and it's not as blatant. It's certainly not, the amounts of money aren't as big, but those kind of corrupt activities, starting with the little things like what you exposed, are going on constantly, and there's nobody there to challenge anymore. Do you have a copy of the ordinance in that folder? I don't. I thought it was the cheat sheet. No. Again, you pay attention so much to what's happening politically, both at the town and state level. But talk with us, put on your book hat for a moment. You've been in here to talk about the books. Just what's the latest that you have going on? Well, I'm working on, my last book was a book on the Marian apparitions at Fatima. And the publisher asked about a 3-book set along those lines. So I'm working on a second book on a Marian apparition. It's Our Lady of Lourdes in France. And then a third book, Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico. And we'll put those together in a 3-book set and sell them that way. And I'm really enjoying this project. I got to tell you, Kate, it's transformational. When you see the sufferings of these little saints and the things that they do, and you say, boy, my life by comparison, I don't know where I'm going at the end of all this, but if it's the same place that they went, it's only by the grace of God, because I don't deserve it. Expected time frame, when are we going to have you back in for book number 2? Oh, that'll be book number 8. And well, in the series, I meant. In the series, yes. I hope to have it done around September. Okay, around September. Well, I'm sure we'll talk with you between here and there. But Paul Caranci, I appreciate you're taking the time to come in and give us, again, some perspective on the recent reporting by GoLocal. As I said, I'm sure we'll talk soon. It's my pleasure, Kate. Okay, Paul Caranci, thanks so much. We'll let you go around the corner, okay? Bye now. Okay, thanks everyone. It's been a busy day here at GoLocal, kicking off at 2 o'clock in the Alex and Ani Lounge with live music, 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. We've been busy here. Appreciate your watching. Tomorrow is Wednesday, which means at 3 o'clock, The Taste with Rick Simone. It sounds like there's a sweet subject ahead of us here, so we'll be having some sweets and good stuff here, and I'll be back at 4 with news and politics. We do have Cranston Mayor and Republican gubernatorial candidate Alan Fung coming into the studio and more. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow in studio, but keep reading GoLocalProv.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter as well. We look forward again to seeing you here tomorrow. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.